Felicia Stanton, the host of Aging Without Limits, and my mission is to empower you with the knowledge and tools to help you maintain optimal health no matter how old you are today. And remember that what you do today matters tomorrow. Today, we're going to look at brain function from two different angles: hypnosis and Alzheimer's prevention. And you think to yourself, well, how are those two related? Hypnosis helps us focus on our active mind and keep it active and really enhance the mind-body connection. And Alzheimer's prevention is going to really help us maintain our memory and keep our mind active as we age. So what is hypnosis? It originally was termed nervous sleep, and it's a relaxed state of mind that we naturally go into. It used to be thought of as an unconsciousness resembling sleep, but actually it's a wakeful state of focused attention, heightened suggestibility, and reduced peripheral awareness. So what the heck does that mean? Essentially what that means is that you are able to focus so well that you tune everything else out around you. And it's actually a state of physical relaxation that's induced by very, very high concentration. So you're fully conscious, but you tune out almost everything around you, and you focus intently on the subject at hand, really to the exclusion of everything else. They start sometimes with something called induction, which is a way to kind of, heighten the expectation of the person being hypnotized and kind of define their role and focus their attention. And then they talk about people who are hypnotized having suggestibility, or the ability to have suggestion given to them. And that's actually the act of focusing the conscious mind of the subject upon a really dominant idea. When the idea is suggested to you, you really completely embrace it. And it can be done permissively or authoritatively, so someone who you believe has authority over you or more knowledge than you telling you that suggestion actually has more power. And most suggestions now are designed to kind of bring about an immediate response, such as, when people are doing hypnosis shows and they say, raise your arm, well, that's an immediate response. Hypnotherapeutic suggestions usually focus on something that's more after the session is done. And they try and trigger behaviors for periods of time from days to a lifetime. And a lot of times you have multiple sessions of those to help things work better. Now you have to keep in mind that people who are under hypnosis have free will, that their sense of safety and morality is intact, so you can't hypnotize somebody and then go have them rob a bank or do something that is not within their realm of what they can do. Now, everyday forms of hypnosis include reading, driving, mowing the lawn, watching the movies. In all of those things, you're obviously doing an activity, but your mind is really focused on what's happening. As a matter of fact, if you think about when you're reading or watching a movie, the imaginary world seems very real to you in the sense that it fully engages your emotions, so that you're pretty much in the movie or in the book, and that's hypnosis. When people are being hypnotized, they feel uninhibited and relaxed because they really tune out the worries and doubts that normally keep their attentions in check or keep their actions in check. Some people believe that hypnosis allows you to access your subconscious mind. And what's interesting is that we usually do a lot of our problem solving in our conscious mind that we're thinking about when we're thinking through a problem. But our subconscious mind is kind of the behind the scenes part to our brain. And it actually accesses lots and lots of information. Everything that we've ever seen or felt is stored in our subconscious mind. It accesses all this information and puts it together, and then it presents it to the conscious mind. So sometimes you get these out of the blue ideas, and the reality is those are things that were really worked on in the subconscious mind and then presented to the conscious mind. So sometimes people suggest that if you have a significant problem, that before you go to sleep, you kind of think through what the problem is as best you can, and then just let it go and go to sleep. And a lot of times during the night, your subconscious mind works on it, and you may come up with an answer in the morning. Subconscious mind also takes care of all that you automatically do, like breathing. You don't think every second, breathe in, breathe out. Or when you're driving, your subconscious mind is doing a lot of the driving. How many times have you gotten to a destination and you can't really remember going through a traffic light or doing, different parts of that drive, especially if it's one that you do every day? So hypnosis may calm and subdue that conscious mind so it takes less active role in the thought process. Therefore, the hypnotherapist can work directly with the subconscious. So let's hear how our first guest, Steve G. Jones, a hypnotherapist and an author of 22 books, uses hypnosis to help his clients relieve stress and reverse aging.
I'm here with Steve G. Jones. He has over 20 years of experience in hypnosis. I cannot wait to hear what he has to say because hypnosis has always fascinated me. So he's a hypnotist. He is a neurolinguistic programmer. He also focuses on astral projection and numerology. So a lot of really cool things that fascinate me. Created over 4,000 hypnosis and self-improvement programs. He's the author of 22 books on hypnosis. And he got his bachelor's degree in psychology from University of Florida, a master's degree in education from Armstrong at Atlantic State University, and he's working on a doctorate in education from Georgia Southern University. Very well educated and qualified. His former clients include people like Danny Bonaducci, Geraldine Saunders, who's the creator of the Love Boat series, Tom Mankiewicz, who's the writer of the Superman the movie, and many other celebrities. So I want to welcome you to the show, Steve.
Thanks, Alicia. Great to be here.
Thank you. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the general information on hypnosis for someone who might not, who knows what it is but doesn't really have a clear understanding?
Sure. Well, hypnosis is just a relaxed state of mind, and we all go there many times throughout our day. It's natural for us to go into hypnosis. We just don't usually call it that. We usually call it spacing out or daydreaming or something like that. So it's just that relaxed state that we can go into naturally, except when a hypnotist or hypnotherapist, either term will do, when they form hypnotherapy, what they're doing is causing you to go into that state that you already know how to go into. And as it turns out, we're fairly suggestible in that state. So we're also putting positive suggestions in your mind while you're there.
That's very cool. Now, question for you, because I get a lot of questions from my patients on things like ADHD and that, and you talked about it being spacing out. Is that kind of where people with ADHD go when they space out, or is it a different place?
Well, I feel that, now, and I'm not a medical doctor, but I feel that people with ADHD tend to go into other highly active realms. Their attention isn't really focused on one thing; it's kind of scattered. And so, whereas a person going into hypnosis would go into a relaxed zone, a person with ADHD, as far as I can determine, they tend to just flitter about from highly active zone to highly active zone.
Interesting. That's a good way to look at it. You're right; it's very active. So, how can hypnosis help people improve in the aging process?
Well, if you think about aging, it's really something that we've been fed. We've been told that things break down and so forth, and a lot of it is just meant to be. I mean, a car is not going to last forever. A human body is not going to last forever. So I'm certainly not of the camp, and there are people in this camp who say that you can just live forever. Your human body can live forever. I believe that there is a natural process which does cause us to break down over time, and to some degree we can hold that off, alter it, and a lot of it has to do with getting out of this concept of the programming that we've been fed, that as you get older you start to do less and you start to think like an older person, and people will get different haircuts and all kinds of things. So part of it is just getting ourselves out of all the stuff we've been fed from the media and from movies and from what we see around us and maybe what we saw of our parents. But there's also a physiological component, of course, to the aging process, which our minds can, to some degree, regulate. Our minds play a huge role our brains actually play a huge role in regulating our bodies, causing breathing and blood circulation and so forth. And as it turns out, through suggestion, we can gain some control over that, causing efficiency to stay at a high level rather than going down over time.
Interesting. That's very cool. So when you're treating somebody to help them optimize their aging process and everything, you would have them go into a hypnotic state or that relaxed state and then suggest to them things that are going to make their body work better so it's more efficient?
Yes, absolutely. And this has been shown. I mean, the AMA, the American Medical Association, has accepted hypnotherapy. I believe it's in the 1950s that they first took notice of hypnotherapy as a viable treatment for certain things. And one of the things that can be directly affected by hypnotherapy, by just words, when we're talking about hypnotherapy, we're just talking about words, telling someone they're going to do something. One of them would be regulating the heartbeat. Another one would be controlling bleeding. These are demonstratable processes that can be directly affected just by words, just by suggestion. You can actually control someone's bleeding. You can improve their healing time. You can slow or speed up their heart rate. So the reason this works is because our brains are in charge. And when we take more direct control of our brains, we take more direct control of our bodies. Sometimes it's helpful to have another person telling you these things so that you don't have to be an expert in it yourself, but we can, through simple suggestion, yes, actually change and make more efficient the processes, the natural processes of our body, and that helps over time. As we would tend to decline in certain processes, we can actually keep that steady or actually improve it.
That's awesome. And I do appreciate the control that the brain has over the body. You know, it's funny because I can imagine you're talking about controlling bleeding, and bleeding is controlled by particular proteins that the liver makes. And I can imagine that if you're telling somebody or suggesting them that they can control their bleeding, that the brain would just say to the liver, okay, make these clotting factors and make these proteins, and it happens. And so I can definitely picture that, which is very fascinating.
Yes, it is amazing.
And recognized by the AMA is also always helpful in the credibility factors, so that is good too. This is not hypnosis, but I've heard a lot of different things about neurolinguistic programming. Can you talk about that for just a second as well?
Sure. Neurolinguistic programming was created by two gentlemen, Richard Bandler and John Grinder, in California in the late 70s, and it's just gained in popularity. The body of knowledge that we now call NLP, or neurolinguistic programming, is added to by the minute. By the minute, people who are in the world of NLP are contributing to it. I myself run the American University of NLP, the AUNLP, and we certify people at three different levels: practitioner, master practitioner, and trainer, so they can train others. But NLP is, in its essence, it's a lot of things, but in its essence, it's reassigning the relationships we have in our brain. For example, some people associate time with getting older and acting older. Well, if we can change that association, we can use NLP to do that. We can change that association so that time, the passing of time, no longer means that you're becoming decrepit and slow and inefficient physiologically. It actually means that these things are improving or staying the same. And we can do that with NLP, which helps us reassign these relationships we have in our brains.
That's great. Okay, I could definitely see how that could help out as far as optimizing the aging process, so you don't you don't have the same relationships. I love it. How can the different self-improvement techniques that you have help our listeners on Aging Without Limits?
Well, the different techniques that I have deal with hypnotizing yourself. I believe all hypnosis is really self-hypnosis, even when you're listening to a recording. But what I have would be a collection of recordings that people can listen to help them with this. So I have one for, it's called reverse aging, actually. The way that works is by relaxing you into the state of hypnosis that we're talking about, and putting new suggestions in your mind, causing new associations, so using a little bit of NLP, and causing you to continue to think like a younger person, continue to act like a younger person, getting out there and doing things, and also programming your body physiologically to keep up what it's doing and to not sell out this idea of becoming old and defunct and so forth. So the techniques have to do with those different categories.
That's awesome. You have one for beautiful skin and one for stress relief. Tell me a little bit about the stress relief, because I find that that's so very critical today more than any time to really help out with hormone balance and everything.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, just earlier today, about an hour ago, I had a phone hypnosis session with a lady in Canada, in Toronto, Canada, because I do phone hypnosis. Hypnosis is just words, so it works over the phone as well. And she hadn't left her house in 9 days because she was so stressed out. She's a real estate agent. Market's gone down. She's actually shut herself in. She's under the care of a medical doctor. She doesn't want to take the anti-stress medication, which I don't recommend either way on that. I stay completely out of that. That's up to a medical doctor, of course. But she was stressed out. Her situation was extreme. But it's not unlike what many people feel, especially with the financial situation today. And in general, people can get stressed out about anything. Some people will get worked up about anything. The trick to de-stressing is to take yourself out of the situation. With her, it was having her realize that this is just a cycle, a real estate cycle. We're going to pull out of it. It happens. There are ups and downs. With us, in general, it's a matter of taking ourselves out of the little microcosm we've gotten ourselves into, our world, which has this person and that person, this job and that bill and so forth, and just removing ourselves from that, zooming out. I believe it's Da Vinci who said, take frequent vacations, because when you do, the problems look small from far away. It's a matter of getting ourselves out of our heads, out of our situations temporarily, realizing the big picture, and being okay with everything, and just letting it go, because we tack on all these things to ourselves. So that's the main part of de-stressing.
That's very cool. Now, one of the things that just came to me as I'm talking to you with the suggestions, do you think that people in the relaxed state pay attention to the suggestions more because they're coming from somebody else, and your brain will allow something in from somebody else versus something that you're going to come up with on your own?
Yes. There are a couple factors that really help with the efficacy of hypnosis, with the power of it. One is if something comes from an authority figure. If a parent tells us something, or if a doctor tells us something, we tend to accept it more. It tends to be more hypnotic. It tends to have more power rather than just someone in the streets telling us something. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, yes, having someone other than ourselves tell it to ourselves. Self-talk is great, but we tend to want to hear it from somebody else. So that's more powerful than us doing it ourselves. Not as powerful as an authority figure, but when you combine the two, when you have someone other than yourself and they're an authority figure, it's extremely powerful, and the efficacy goes way up. The chances of it working go way up.
That's very cool. You have the other recording on beautiful skin. What kind of suggestions do you put into there to help someone with beautiful skin?
Well, I put all the obvious ones in there. Stay out of the sun, use sunblock, drink plenty of water, eat things that are good, avoid things that are not helpful to your skin, and so forth. So I cover all the obvious bases. And then I go deeper into what hypnosis is really good at, which is reprogramming the body physiologically, so that these processes, the same processes that have to do with anti-aging, as it turns out, also contribute to helping the largest organ of our body, which is our skin. They really pay off. Getting the cells to do what they're supposed to do, sometimes there are a lot of different reasons why people don't have beautiful skin, and sometimes they're based on physiological processes that have gone awry that are correctable through simple suggestions. A lot of times people will get rashes just because of nervousness. They'll just have there'll be no organic explanation for it. They haven't been exposed to anything except their own minds. So a lot of times situations like that are occurring. So I cover all of those bases as well, that what you're feeling internally won't show on your skin. You won't have that connection anymore. So I cover those main categories.
That's very cool. Do you happen to have any recordings for detoxification or removal of toxins from the body at all?
I don't believe I have anything exactly on that. I may. I have a fairly lengthy career, and it is possible I've touched on that at least tangentially, but I don't recall any specific title like that, but I'm sure you can find in my library of 4,000 recordings something that's pretty close.
Yeah, definitely. Well, if not, maybe we can work on one together. We'll come up with one.
I'd be honored.
If you don't already have it. So how do you use your techniques in your own life?
Well, in my life, I come across things all the time. For example, after 9/11, I didn't fly for a year because I was scared to fly. And I thought, this has got to end. I've got seminars to do. I've got things going on. I'm driving everywhere. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, so I had a lot of access to things in California, but things overseas were out of the question for a year. So I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm a hypnotherapist. I'm better than this. I know how to get over this. So I made a recording for Overcome Fear of Flying, and I started listening to it myself. It was just for me, so I could see myself flying and everything would be okay. So when I actually did it, I would be calm, and it worked. So then I made it available to everyone else. So that's one of the ways that I've helped myself. Also in getting through school. I'm in my 40s now, finishing my doctorate in education, so I'm a little late in the game for someone going through the educational process. That took a little bit of me telling myself, hey, get back in there, stick with it, that sort of thing. So I hypnotized myself, programmed myself to look toward the future and look at all the benefit I would would be bringing to people with my degree in education, able to educate them more thoroughly with that degree. So I'm constantly working with myself hypnotically to program myself for success.
And that's important. I mean, it's great to know that everything that you're using to help everybody else, you're also able to help yourself with, and to be able to move you forward and move through things. So do you do some of the reverse aging things as well with yourself, so you're going to stay nice and young and spry?
I do. And a lot of what I do is positive self-talk throughout the day and just focusing on positive things. When I catch myself saying something negative to myself about aging or what have you, see a few gray hairs, I change that immediately, and I start talking about how young I am, how young I look, how my body is processing the foods that I eat to give myself the energy that I need and to rejuvenate the cells and keep them healthy. And I'm hypnotizing myself in the evening with my recordings, and I'm constantly reminding myself throughout the day about the power of my subconscious mind and how it is helping.
That is awesome. I know that you also have areas of expertise in life coaching, and we talked about stress management. And I know a lot of my listeners are always concerned about weight loss and dieting and everything. Do you have expertise in that as well?
Yes. When I had my office in Beverly Hills, I worked with a lot of people. Miss California came to me 1 year to work on things. So I had to develop a protocol which was then not only useful in the office but also useful on a wide scale. So I have quite a few weight loss recordings now that are designed as a catch-all, because there's so many different reasons for people to gain weight. So I incorporated all of those and put all of those into these several recordings that I made available.
That's excellent. And I'm sure people will be very interested in that. And the same thing with the life coaching. Did some of the celebrities that you worked with come in for life coaching and how to improve what's happening with their shows and those kinds of things?
Oh, absolutely. I would have, the people who would come in to see me were getting $5 million, $10 million per movie, and they would do one movie, and that was great. They make a bunch of money. But with actors, they never, even the best actors, they never know when their next job is going to be. Now, some of them have it kind of, mapped out, and they always have new offers. But a lot of actors, a lot of very popular actors, are really in a situation where they're unemployed 90% of the time. And they just made a lot of money, but they don't know where their next paycheck's going to come from, and that money is already spent on something. So
exactly.
They're very nervous. And actors are notorious for having low self-esteem. You would think they're on top of the world, but really a lot of that reaching out and so forth is an attempt to feel better about themselves, and inside they don't feel so good. So they would wind up in my office, and I, of course, developed a protocol to help them get themselves back on their feet and just remember how powerful they are and go after the next big job.
That's very cool. And you're right. I think a lot of people feel that actors are these self-assured people, but that I think is a lot of times why they act, because who they truly are isn't good enough, and so they have to be somebody else all the time. Right.
Even De Niro said. Now, De Niro is a very wonderful actor, but he said that he enjoys acting because he gets to be people who he could never be in his normal life. He could never be, in a daily life. He could never be the burglar or the hitman or whatever. That's just not going to fly in his normal life. So it gives him a chance to reach out. But in almost every case, I noticed that what they're really doing is they're reaching out for love from you, from me, from everyone, because love from just a family isn't enough for an actor. They need love from the whole world. So their ego is usually a lot more delicate than the average person's ego.
That's fascinating, and that's probably why you end up seeing all the stunts and all the drama, because it just brings more attention and more to them. And then if they're not successful, it's that much more tragic and dramatic for them as well. So it's fascinating insight. I hadn't really thought of a lot of those things before.
Yeah, they do tend to crash pretty badly when they don't get what they want.
Poor pumpkins. I know. So how can people make permanent changes in their lives?
Well, the secret to permanent change is to, again, take yourself out of the immediate situation and to realize that what you are in is something that's part of a cycle. Once you realize that it's got a nature that goes up and down, you realize where you are at that particular time. It has to do with binge eating or any kind of compulsion like gambling or anything. if you can just pull yourself out of the immediate situation. People get in and out of relationships, people get on and off drugs, all sorts of things. Pull yourself out of it. Look at the big picture, see what's really going on, get a little insight as to why it started. Did someone say something early on? Did someone do some programming without perhaps meaning to early on? Weed that out and maintain that pulled-out view of everything where you're not getting too zoomed in on the microcosm of your life. And that's what I do with hypnosis. I show people that big picture. I deal with their initial reason for overeating or biting their nails or being afraid of flying or whatever it is, and then they're able to move forward and maintain that. What a lot of the mistakes people make have to do with just putting a Band-Aid on something, thinking, okay, I'll do a 30-day diet. I'll just diet because the 10-year reunion is coming up, and I'll lose weight for that. And that really doesn't do any good in the long term. So pulling out, seeing the big picture, and getting rid of the initial reasons, those things I've found are of tremendous value.
That's excellent. I love everything that you're saying. I can guarantee you that I'll be jumping online and getting some of your recordings. How can my listeners find your products? You've had such great products you're talking about.
Well, thank you. The main way to find them is by going to my website, which is just my name, SteveGJones.com, G as in Gregory, SteveGJones.com. And there's a little search bar at the top where you just type in what you're looking for, and through the 500 pages or so on the website, you'll be able to find pretty much anything you want.
All right, well, I will, sure the listeners have access to that. I will print it in the little description of the show. Is there any last word that you want to get out for the listeners?
Well, I'm always reminded at this point of the song by America, which goes something like, Oz never did give nothing to the Tin Man that he didn't already have. There's nothing that I can give someone as a hypnotherapist that they don't already have. We all have within ourselves the ability to change, the ability to grow, the ability to renew our bodies and to do whatever we want. Sometimes we need a reminder, a gentle reminder, someone other than us saying, hey, you can do this. You're better than this. You have the ability to do it. When we find ourselves in that situation where we do need a reminder, that's when hypnotherapy can come into play and really help out.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm definitely going to have you back so that we can share more on this in the near future.
Thank you, Alicia.
Take care.
I loved his information, and I'm really looking forward to getting some of his products on StephenGJones.com. It intrigues me to think that even actors can have low self-esteem. Hypnosis helps us to focus on the conscious and subconscious mind. Hypnosis helps us to focus on the conscious and subconscious mind, then enhances our body through the mind-body connection. But how do we keep our mind healthy? One of the biggest concerns of our baby boomers is Alzheimer's prevention. In reality, Alzheimer's prevention really should start very early in life. As I always say, what you do today matters tomorrow, and this is so true for preventing Alzheimer's. First of all, to understand what Alzheimer's is a disease of the brain causing the most common form of dementia that we see. It's an inability to really acquire new memories and having difficulty recalling recently observed facts, and then you end up losing long-term memory as well. In 2006, 26.6 million sufferers of Alzheimer's existed worldwide. At this rate, they estimate that by the year 2050, 1 in every 85 people will have Alzheimer's. But it really doesn't have to be this way. Symptoms of Alzheimer's are confusion, irritability, mood swings, language breakdown, long-term memory loss, and as the disease progresses, you actually have difficulty with the body, eventually death. It is a terminal disease. Right now they say that there's no treatment for it. It's associated with tangles and beta amyloid plaques in the brain. What's interesting, because I talk about hormones a lot, is that both estrogen and testosterone have been shown to reduce this beta amyloid plaque production. As a matter of fact, estrogen has a number of different functions for the brain. It increases the blood flow, increases the glucose and oxygen to the brain cells. It helps keep the blood-brain barrier working. It decreases your seizure threshold. It affects your gene expression to make your brain work better. Increases serotonin, increases dopamine, and these are two very important neurotransmitters or brain chemicals that help your brain work better. It also increases GABA, which is a calming neurotransmitter. And it really helps the brain in reducing the effects of aging and helps improve the function of your neurons. So having adequate estrogen levels does help your brain. The same can be shown for testosterone. It's very interesting because a study was done looking at two groups of men with Alzheimer's, and they followed them for a year. And half of the men had no testosterone therapy, but they had, the standard exercises and things like that that they normally do for Alzheimer's patients. The second half had those exercises, but they also had testosterone therapy. And they found that the men with testosterone therapy actually improved, which is very rare with Alzheimer's patients, and the group that didn't have it continued to deteriorate. So I think that there's a place to look at for hormone therapy with Alzheimer's as well. So what are some of the risk factors for Alzheimer's? Things that you want to look at every day right now in your life to help you, start preventing it. Things that you want to look at are what are your level of intake for trans fats and saturated fats, especially trans fats, because they're fake fats. Our body doesn't know what to do with them, and the more of these fats that we have, the harder it is for our body to process them. What's interesting is that 40% of our brain is fat. So I always tell my patients that, yes, we are all fatheads, but the reality is a specific kind of fat. We need DHA, not to be confused with DHEA, DHA and EPA. These are the omega-3 fatty acids. They're very important for our brains to keep the cells healthy. So you want to make sure you're limiting your trans fats. You want to make sure the artificial sweeteners, especially NutraSweet, is very neurotoxic. It can really create problems with your brain. So you want to stay away from NutraSweet or aspartame. You want to make sure you're eating as many vegetables as you can. There are a lot of phytonutrients. They're very good things for your brain to help make it work better. So that's going to be very important. Another thing, that I harp on all the time is trying to limit your sugar intake and refined carbohydrates. Sugar can be a significant problem for your brain, especially if you have elevated sugar all the time or you develop diabetes. Something that you don't think about very often is what is in your medicine cabinet, because many over-the-counter and prescription drugs can actually decrease your brain function and make you more susceptible to neurological problems. There are a lot of drugs that deplete key brain antioxidants like coenzyme Q10 and glutathione. And these are very important for protecting your brain from free radical damage, or we call oxidation. Free radicals are what create rust on metal when metal starts aging. That exact same process happens all throughout your body. And what happens in your brain, you start getting inflammation and irritation, and that sets you up for problems with your brain. So you need things like coenzyme Q10 and glutathione to help reduce this free radical damage, reduce this inflammation in your brain. Other drugs can reduce the body's ability to have B vitamins, and B vitamins control something called homocysteine. And homocysteine, if that's too high, can also create inflammation and irritation in your brain. It also makes you more susceptible to heart disease and osteoporosis as well. Other commonly used drugs, including a lot of the commonly used antacids, have aluminum in them. And aluminum is a heavy metal that promotes inflammation. It can actually increase the risk of Alzheimer's disease as well. So you have to look at a lot of your medications and make sure that they're things that you really need to be on. If you have to be on some of these medications, make sure that you're supplementing with the important nutrients like coenzyme Q10 and glutathione. Another very critical thing to help your brain is sleep. And I talk about how important sleep is for hormone balance, for reducing your cortisol levels, and actually for weight loss. But sleep is also very, very important for your brain. According to a recent study by the National Sleep Foundation, as many as 47 million Americans routinely are sleep deprived, and they regularly don't get the optimal 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. Even one night of sleep lost can have an effect on your body's ability to handle insulin and put you into a pre-diabetic state. So imagine the people that are losing night after night after night and are getting by on 4, 5, 6 hours of sleep. You can see how these things really can start creating problems for you. Lack of exercise is another significant risk factor for Alzheimer's. So you have to get out there and move. It's very important. And of course, things like smoking tobacco and illicit drugs like cocaine do significant damage to your brain and create a lot more inflammation. So again, those are things that you really need to stop doing if you want to protect your brain from Alzheimer's. Other things that we look closely at are your exposure to toxins. So be careful to look at your water. Make sure that you are drinking filtered water from BPA-free bottles. Make sure you are eliminating actually the use of pesticides in and around your home and on your food. So buy organic as best you can, or if you can't buy organic with your fruits and vegetables, rinse them off in warm, soapy water. The soap actually has something called a surfactant, which will get rid of the pesticide, but just make sure, obviously, that you rinse your fruit off afterwards so you don't have soapy fruit, but that'll help out. The last thing I want to talk about as a major risk factor for Alzheimer's is stress. What's very interesting is that in the short term, your stress response saves your life. It's going to get you out of severe danger. There are a number of interactions with the stress hormone cortisol in your brain, and a lot of those interactions initially are to help you remember that danger and connect that danger with a memory and with an emotion so that you stay away from whatever created the problem in the first place. However, if you have chronically high levels of cortisol, that starts damaging a part of your brain called the hippocampus, and it actually makes it harder for you to create and retrieve memories. And many of you may have had this situation where if you have a significant stressor, like maybe you were in a car accident, suddenly you forget your phone number, or you forget, where your spouse works or something like that. And it's information that you should have, but that you lose it because of high cortisol level. So we have to look at ways to reduce the stress in order to make sure that you are not going to develop Alzheimer's. So let's listen to Suzanne Holtzman. She's an educator in psychology and nutrition, and she's dedicated her life now to sharing information on how to optimize your brain.
Hi, I'm here with Suzanne Holtzman, and she is a former educator in psychology and nutrition, a women's weight trainer, and aerobics instructor. So she's doing a whole bunch of things with her life. She's also the mother of 3, a grandmother of 5 children under the age of 7, so I can't imagine what Christmas is like. And she walked the Alzheimer's journey with her mother, who passed away last November. And that's really one of the things that's been an interest to her. She's a consultant, writer, speaker, and she's sharing information on optimizing your brain. And she currently lives in Phoenix. So I want to welcome you to the show, Suzanne.
It's wonderful to be here with Alicia. I love the work that you're doing, and I appreciate being able to connect with you and share my commitment and passion for letting people know how much power they do have over their brain and cognitive functioning.
That's very cool. I actually was just involved in a teleseminar on hormones in the brain and talking about prevention of Alzheimer's and everything. And you're right. I think there's so many things that we can do if we really focus on ourselves and on being whole people and on doing all those things. So I was so sorry to hear about your mother. Can you tell me a little bit about her and how you were on the journey with her?
Mom was really one of these lifelong learners, very active, very in control of her life. And early in 2001, I started seeing some symptoms of changes. What did I say? 2000? It was 2005.
2005.
Let's throw all the years around. Okay. Anyway, early 2005, started to see some changes, which were concerning. But the day that I really knew that we needed to do something extremely different was I would drive over to pick her up, take her to doctor's appointments, and she was always, dressed and showered and ready to go, and sometimes sitting on the front porch waiting for me. Now, as I drove into this retirement community where she lived, it's beautiful, the flowers, and I drove up the driveway and I saw Mom sitting on her little porch in this nightgown kind of falling off her shoulder. Mm-hmm. And it was really, really hot outside, and I was just knew, it just isn't my mom. She always was so concerned about what people thought of her. And I said, Mom, why are you out here in your nightgown? She said, oh, who cares? She just would sit on her bed and say, what do I do next? And she was just lost. We had to get her into an Alzheimer's care facility for her safety. And she lived for 4 years with Alzheimer's and passed away. She turned 95 last November 5th and died 6 days later.
Really?
She had been very consistent with her health. And the night of her birthday, the triage for hospice called me and said they needed to put her on oxygen, and she died 6 days later. It was like, Mom, that was interesting because I don't know that she was that aware. I had balloons and everything for her birthday, but it was like she made it that day. But what I noticed as when she was showing symptoms, with the stress of the situation, I would feel like, I was forgetting things and then overreacted, as we all can do. Something's going on with me.
Right.
And I found it affecting my health, my work. I have my own business. I needed to be on task with that, and I found it very difficult. And I knew I needed to take some serious steps to have extreme self-care for myself, ways that I could give myself the best possible support. And so I did more researching. I've always been into exercise, and this is such a key part. And even when I was distracted by doing things for her, I knew I had to keep that in my routine, because when we get that cardio, and it does take some pretty vigorous cardio to get the effect, it's one of the very best things that we can do for our brain, because of how it really forces the blood and the nutrients, the oxygen into the brain. So everything that we can do for our cardiovascular system is really supporting our brain. And so I kept that as a very key part of my days. And even if I wasn't able to get to the gym every day, I'd do something, move around the house, put on some music. And I remember during that period of time, I also was in a bit of a funk, and I thought, I need to do something different. And I was at a seminar, and they had us do just a little bit of like belly dance kind of movements.
Oh, fun,
was it like a personal growth seminar? And I thought, that might be something I could do. So I found a belly dancing class. And I thought the best part, putting these jingly things around my waist and moving, just really took me out of the stuckness I was feeling. And what's so great, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, I know that you know all these things,
that's awesome.
Just sharing, but when we do something that's physical, that's also new movements, we're creating so many more neural connections in our brain. So we're not only getting the physical, we're getting that movement and just letting it go and releasing stress, but we're also building those neural connections. So it's just a wonderful thing to try new physical movements.
That's fantastic. So you're not only are you getting new movements in your body, you're really exercising your brain, not just getting the oxygen there, but literally making more pathways, which is great exercise for your brain. You're right.
Another great one is water aerobics, aqua exercise, because you're always doing different things. If you have a good instructor, I know ours does the interval training where we go really hard for a minute or 2 minutes, and then we slow down. And she's always having us do different things. And so you're always having to think about your movements, and you're getting really good cardio. So it's great no matter what kind of thing you like to do. Some people do not like to do exercise, but there's some way that you can move so that you can support yourself that way.
No, that is very cool. And, you forget about things like water aerobics or aqua aerobics as, good exercises. And you're right. Some people don't think, they want to go to the gym or, pick up a weight or do those kinds of things. But, jumping in a pool and hanging out with, with other people, could be a lot of fun. So I think that's great.
Something about being in the water. I used to think that water aerobics was not all that great. You think of it with older people. But when you have a class that's really well taught, and there's something about being in the water, you can kind of fling yourself all around, more so than you can on the land. And people in the class think I'm this crazy lady because I just let it loose. You wear your water shoes so that you can have good spring in your step and just really get a lot of exercise, even if you can't have a lot of impact on your knees or legs. I have knees that cannot tolerate running anymore or high-impact aerobics. So in the pool, I can do all that and not have a problem with my knees. So I think it's my recess. I noticed you said we have to have recess every day. And so and I've always said that my workouts are recess. A former teacher, I think, in terms of recess. So it's definitely recess for me. And my whole theory lately about the brain health for boomers, it's kind of a scary thing for some people to even think about. They don't want to think about Alzheimer's. They think, well, I'm not that old, and just brain health sounds hard. And I am committed to making this fun because I don't want boomers to think that they want to avoid the whole issue of Alzheimer's. Because what the studies are showing is that you can have Alzheimer's going on in your brain if you have that APOE4 gene in there. It can be there for years and years and years. And depending on what you do to support your genetic structure makes all the difference. You can avoid it, possibly delay it, and possibly avoid it entirely, because you can support your brain throughout your life until you're at the very, like the pathology in your brain can continue, and until you're at the very late stages where it affects you in your physical body, because it gets into all parts of your body. You could delay it 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And that's what's exciting about this, that we do not have to be a victim to our genetic structure.
That is very good. And it's interesting because one of the, the missions of this show, I always say, what you do today matters tomorrow. And it's very true. Can you, for the listeners, talk a little bit more about the gene in case they've never heard of it?
I'm not about to tell you that I'm an expert about it. I think it sounds a little bit like Star Wars, and I'm still learning about the gene. I'm not a geneticist. I'm not a doctor. But it is, depending on whether you inherit it from one or both parents, you are 3 to 8 times more likely to have Alzheimer's if you have that gene. So it can be diagnosed with a blood test. I have not researched. I'm not sure how difficult that is to, if it's a very special blood test. For myself, I actually went to a neurologist when I was panicking about my mom. Sure. When she was diagnosed, and he put me through some testing, and he also did some verbal testing. And he was reassuring to me also that if your parent gets the Alzheimer's showing up in their early stages, like early ages, I should say, like in the 60s, even some people even show up in the 30s and 40s, which is really scary. But if that type of the gene is going to be much more likely to be inherited than when someone in their 90s, like mom was 91, about 50% of people in their 80s and on have some form of dementia or Alzheimer's. My mission is to see that age go up. I don't want to even think about that many people having it show up. So I don't know how many people I can influence worldwide, but I'm doing my best to spread the word so that we don't reach that point, because we're living longer. Hopefully we can move it up. But the statistics are not good right now. When you hear the projections, right now there are 5.3 million Americans with Alzheimer's, and that's 1 out of 8 people 65 and older, 13%. And they say every 70 seconds someone in America is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease.
I agree with you that you can do things to reverse it. And one of the points that I wanted to make for the listeners when you're talking about the gene, and I thought you did a beautiful job explaining it, is that we know that with genetics, about 20% is the actual gene, 20% of the effect is the gene, and 80% is your environment and what you do around it. So even if you have a pair, one from mom and one from dad, and your risk is 8 times higher than the average bear, it's not a death sentence. There are definitely things that you can do to really, reduce your risks and everything. So I think that your message is a beautiful one in getting that out to everybody. So I just wanted to kind of say that little piece there.
And you know how it used to be with cancer? People didn't want to even mention the word. I think that's changed a lot because we have a lot more control over the. A lot of people are doing well who have had cancer. I think that's what's happening with Alzheimer's because it is so scary. People don't want to think about it. They don't realize that they have that control over the genes. I love Bruce Lipton's work. I think he's really letting people learn more and more about how much influence we have over our genetics. And we know physically how we can do that, and yet the brain is more of a mystery to people. And it's scarier, and people don't want to talk about it because they don't want to think about themselves as losing their mental acuity, and there's a lot of stigma to that. So if boomers can just realize that it's worth the time, and one of the things I do is ways that you can plan and prepare food so that it's not a big time-consuming project, and you don't have to go to the store every day to get your fresh vegetables. I'm a single woman, and I prepare great meals for myself. I don't spend a lot of time with it, but I know that I'm feeding my body the things that are going to do the best for me. So I work with clients to come up with ways that they can add exercise to their schedule without making it be a big time commitment. If they do the interval training, they can do a lot more good in less time.
Right.
And ways that they can prepare the food, have it ready. That's the whole thing. When you don't have it ready to go, then that's when you fall back on fast food that might not be the best thing for you. And people think they don't have time to cook, they don't have time to shop. And when you plan ahead and you use your freezer to have things on hand, so wonderful array of organic vegetables and fruits that are frozen. They're picked and frozen right at their peak, and they're kept really fresh. You get more nutrients from them probably than a lot of the fresh things that have been sitting around. So I like getting the fresh foods, but I always have a backup in my freezer so that it's ready to pull out. And I love doing berries with yogurt, and I'll pour out some of my frozen berries into a little container, put it into the microwave, just zap it for defrost, and then put some of either the Greek unsweetened yogurt or regular non-fat yogurt over it, and it's a wonderful snack. Crush up some walnuts over it, and you're getting your omega-3s and your vitamin E in there. So that's something you can have on hand that yogurt keeps for a long time, and you can use it for a great snack no matter what time of the day.
That's neat. What are some of the other great foods or the best foods for supporting the brain?
Any of the really colorful vegetables and fruits, pretty much down the line. If something's colorful, basically it's really good for you. Blueberries is one of the tops, and something that I just love doing a shake of some kind in the morning. I've done it for years and years and years. And in the last couple years, I finally was convinced that putting a lot of fresh spinach in a blender and blending it with other things would be good. And what makes it good is having the fresh ginger in with it, because it gives it some good flavor.
That sounds good.
And so you can put frozen berries in there that helps, make it into more of a smoothie. I use ground flaxseed in there. And you can also add a powdered supplement, and there's a lot of controversy over that, but I choose one that's part soy and part whey, and it has a little stevia in it, so it gives the shake a really good taste to it. And you can also throw in other vegetables. That's an easy way to get a great start to your day, and it keeps you satisfied for the morning. And when I travel, I take Ziploc bags, and I use the fresh pressed green food, and put in my flax and the other powdered supplement. And there's also a powdered berry powder that's really, I forget the name that I use, but it's really supercharged. And you put all that in a little baggie, and I just take a coffee cup that has a lid. You can just shake it up. I was just in Las Vegas for a conference. Shake it up, drink it with your other supplements, and you're good to go for the morning. You don't have to go try to find something that's going to be nutritional at one of the restaurants around.
Which isn't going to happen. Well, I mean, if you can get to a restaurant that has, great omelets or things like that, spinach omelets, you're in good shape. But if you're just walking through a lot of those places in Vegas, you're not finding a healthy breakfast. So.
And it's quick. What's quicker than that? It's really quick. And when you're saying omelets, that's another one of my favorite things. But when I was just visiting with my son and daughter-in-law, and that's another thing when you're in someone's home. Okay, so I take my little packets, I do my shake, doesn't bother anyone, and then everyone has eggs, and eggs who have gotten such a bad rap are.
I love eggs.
They're so nutritional, and you're getting your omega-3s and the a whole range of different nutrients. I decided I didn't want to get real technical in our talk because sometimes it gets overwhelming for people. But eggs are a full nutritional source, and the calories are low. You can either use the whole eggs, which is what's being recommended more and more. Sometimes I use an egg and then a white of an egg. But most everyone will have eggs in the refrigerator. So I whip up an egg, a couple eggs for an omelet. I just like the omelets better than any other way of preparing eggs. And I put it in the pan, and I always flip it over because I like it to be really well cooked. And then some low-fat cheese I sprinkle on the top. And then I flip it over again, and it makes this crispy, I love that taste of kind of crispy cheese. And when you flip it over, you've got the texture of kind of that crispness and the egg, and you don't mind not having toast with it. Although, you could have some whole grain toast. Another thing I've done with it is actually put it in like a lettuce wrap. Put the omelet inside of some romaine lettuce, either the really big leaf or a couple of smaller ones. That's good, or else a whole wheat tortilla. But it's great to know that there are things that you can do for yourself no matter where you are. And
no, that's a very good thing. What are some of the other things you've talked about? Exercise and interval training and the healthy foods. What are some of the other things that you do with your clients to help optimize their brain function?
Well, we need to. What I first do, we look together at their life, at what their concerns are, and whether their brain's spinning around or if they're just lethargic. There can be different ranges of what's going on. What are their concerns and what's their situation, and where can they fit in the exercise, and what would they be willing to do as far as food prep? What would work for them? Sleep is huge. So many people cheat themselves on their sleep, and if you're getting less than 6 hours, you are losing a lot of your restorative time for your brain. So 7 to 8 hours, and that is tricky. Some people can not fall asleep as quickly as they'd like also. So we create a plan that they think is going to work for them, and we make not every change all at once. We gradually add more and more healthy habits into their lifestyle and then monitor it, and I support them in staying with it and changing so it does work for them. And water. That's the thing. That's
very good.
A lot of these things we've heard of for years, and it's just when we realize that we're not only just supporting our body but our brain. And as a result of all this, we're going to probably lose weight and look better and feel better too, which is always a highly desired thing, which is lower body fat is also really good for your brain. When you get into diabetes and high blood pressure, when you're getting overweight, and you're going to have that has a very negative effect on your brain.
You're right, and plus the extra body fat contributes to inflammation, and inflammation is never good for your brain. So to keep that, at bay.
Right. And the inflammation, really quickly. Gum health, really good dental care is so important to keep the inflammation down in your body. That is a huge thing. And taking good care of your eyes, because it has vision and your brain. There are a lot of different connections, not only not being able to see well, but they're finding that there are connections between vision problems and the brain.
That is very helpful information. Thank you. Now, you have a book coming out, Simple Strategies for Boomers to Boost Their Brain Power.
Yes.
When is that coming out?
Well, I won't promise a date.
Okay.
My goal is the middle of 2011.
Beautiful.
And for now, there is a great report that I have, a free report that everyone can get more in details about all of these things if they just go to brainhealthforboomers.com. They can sign up for the free report, and hopefully that'll give you some more ideas of things that you can do for yourself. Also have a course, actually a 3-part course coming up starting November 17th. I call it a jump start to supporting your brain. So.
Awesome. So is that something that they can learn about on brainhealthforboomers.com?
Yes. Yeah, they'll see that in the report. I mentioned the information about that. So enjoy the report, and I also blog. You'll be able to find out all that information, and I like to give as many resources as possible. I give a free teleseminar every week, so tap into all that and be happy to support you in every way I can.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for such great information, Suzanne. I really appreciate hearing from you, and we'll definitely have you back on the show.
I loved being here and I always love talking about this stuff. So
wonderful.
I'm glad to be able to share it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I want to thank Suzanne for her wonderful information. Please visit her site, brainhealthforboomers.com, to get even more information and learn more about how you can help protect your brain. In addition to Suzanne's wonderful suggestions, I wanted to leave you with some nutrient suggestions and Dr. David Perlmutter's 6 Steps to a Better Brain. He writes about this in his book, The Better Brain Book, and I highly recommend it if you have interest in prevention of Alzheimer's. Step 1 is get the trans fatty acids off your plate. So I told you, make sure that you're not eating anything with trans fat in it, and you need to look on the label and make sure you don't see anything that says partially hydrogenated vegetable oil or partially hydrogenated anything, because that is trans fats. And keep in mind that even things that say 0 trans fat can have up to as much as a half a gram of trans fat in it. So if you eat 4 or 5 things that have, quote, 0 trans fat in them, you may actually still be getting 3 or 4 grams of trans fat a day. And 3 or 4 grams is enough to create health issues. Do things like eat a lot more fruits, vegetables, and lean proteins, lean meats, and none of those contain any trans fats. Step 2 is have your homocysteine levels checked each year. And again, homocysteine is affected by B vitamins. High homocysteine levels can create inflammation in your brain. Step number 3 is supplementation. He has a prevention and maintenance supplement regimen that I think is worth listening to. He suggests that you take 300 milligrams of DHA a day, 30 milligrams of coenzyme Q10 per day, 200 international units of vitamin E per day, at least 200 milligrams of vitamin C per day, and a vitamin B complex. That combination of things is very simple to do. And I actually take the omega-3s, which I said the DHA is, one step further. I suggest that you do at least 2,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA for brain health and overall health. And I also suggest that you do vitamin D, 2,000 international units a day as well, and a multivitamin. So those things are going to be very helpful for your overall health and your brain health as well. Step 4 is to think twice before taking a drug. Remember that a lot of the medications will deplete nutrients, and we need all of our nutrients to help out with our brain function. Step 5 is going to be to get 8 hours of sleep every night. We've talked about sleep, which is very important. And step 6 is going to be to have some fun. And having fun is actually one of the best ways to reduce cortisol. So I think that that's really a critical way to look at things, and it's a great way to end the show. And I want to thank you for listening, and I want to thank our 2 amazing guests, Stephen G. Jones and Suzanne Holtzman. I want you to have a great week, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Remember that what you do today matters tomorrow.